That's the whole conceit of Where Sylph Dawning. But, like, she literally is going to be eaten alive by, essentially, her best friend. You know, never mind that I have written stories about myself being eaten alive by a Logicio, and, you know, then being kept alive. Right? In the sense that it's not squicky that the person is being eaten alive because it's not their... Jokes about people being eaten alive, about the... I mean... else in my name and claim it was from me. Fucker, I have written about myself getting eaten alive. I have talked openly many times about discovering this ability to essentially allow people to survive being eaten alive. To give them a sufficient like a certain amount of exploitation, right? Sylphs will gladly be eaten alive. Sylphs will under the right circumstances. In a story that you can read that is just basically me being eaten alive by a passing Logicio. I think that at this point, hear our friends and comrades crying out in terror. We can hear them getting eaten alive. And there is this way that stories that feature women being eaten alive and sold as pets and sold as toys are kind of problematic. People can be torn alive, you know, and eaten alive. That's absolutely fine. But you know, you want to have a positive message of, hey, if your society is being, you know, eaten alive, then you can save it by just trying to enjoy being. What can be done with the character now that she has quite literally been eaten alive by a flying shark and survived is at an end. You were captured, stripped against your will, imprisoned, eaten alive, and now you're infected with an evil thing that can only be kept at bay. Submissive women and the development of a woman to be sold to be eaten alive, but you know, that's kind of fiction that has been indoctrinated to be okay with being eaten alive by the Contravoxi. And right, for all that it is about women being eaten alive, it is also other self who is currently being eaten alive constantly every single day. And so by the time this story want to, that first of all they can actually say no to being eaten alive, and if they do say yes, they can opt for becoming a were-shark still. No effect in society, because basically once the Bluguri can sort of survive being eaten alive, then the Contravoxi has either died to them, or is about to die to them, or gets eaten alive by them for fun. I'm sorry, said Anthony. I shall have to say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be liking women getting eaten alive by sharks this much. I mean, come on, it's not like Sharknado is directed by... Like, they might enjoy being eaten alive, but the fact that you've then got... that you've then got to just sit around where the people get eaten alive when you can heal. If you're a sylph, you're gonna like that. Are you alright, Lucy? Said Anthony. Lucy shrugged. It's better than the war, being eaten alive by the Contravoxi every day. And then the police catch up with him. Because a woman's been eaten alive and he's writing stories about people being eaten alive. A woman's been eaten alive and he's writing stories about people being eaten alive. It's not that much of a leap to make, you know. That as far as they're concerned, they have indeed consented to being eaten alive, and that they will like it, and you can then... People who can heal and like pain. People who like to be eaten alive and will walk away from it. who can guy on the internet who writes fiction about white women being eaten alive. I can entirely understand that. I can entirely understand that some people genuinely anarchy where we are ready, willing, and able to get eaten alive by women because they dictate reproduction. Right?
I mean, getting desensitized to the idea of being eaten alive by sharks in your own fucking nightmares, right?
So then I look at the animal kingdom and I'm like, no, I don't fancy being eaten alive. No, I don't fancy that.
You're going to be cattle. Fiora shrugged. We already are. Roxy smiled. I'm gonna get eaten alive forever. It's the best bad stuff in there, right? Like there is people being eaten alive, kept as cattle, right? Although again, right, who is like the Watson, how he finds out that hey, he likes being eaten alive now, and how he a cut and you renders you insensible. You've just been eaten alive. I suggest you take a break, try to feel normal again.
About women getting kept as pets and eaten alive. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't be lecturing people on what is normal.
Launches up onto the boat and eats Quint alive. So yeah, the idea of being eaten alive was a key sort of. He writes stories about basically women getting eaten alive. Things like, right? Like, my reality is enough. I mean, getting desensitized to the idea of being eaten alive by sharks in your own fucking nightmares, right?
What do I like about women being eaten alive? So what exactly do I like about women being bound up? Was like Fuzzy Logic was essentially Cassie's origin story as the girl that gets eaten alive. So
familial connectivity, and then I have the controvoxide Liguri thing of being eaten alive as sort of a metaphor. She sacrificed herself to the controvoxide for a different, better man and endured being eaten alive in, day out for over 100 years.
Stop, right? And even the elements of sort of the people being eaten alive, that's more a look how horrific eating meat is. Take over the hunter's chicken and then be eaten alive, which is like an absurd sort of set of events.
Well, when you're feeling so bad that you write a story about yourself being eaten alive because without her, she can't bear to see him being eaten alive on her own, so she says, you know what, fuck it. I'm taking them and say, okay, we're gonna make it so that you can now survive being eaten alive and that you're gonna like it and you'll be sane.
If you're gonna write fiction in the multiverse in which people get eaten alive, then you
to go on this experience with and be eaten alive by every day, and it is a, and you've got one toy girl and one woman who likes to be eaten alive, right? This is
revolution by saying, well, the people being eaten alive can now enjoy it and live through it, right? Like that's as I mean, you'd think it'd be a bit fucking obvious when, women are being eaten alive that, this maybe should discrete boners and having nightmares about getting eaten alive.
Who are already indoctrinated to believe that, being eaten alive by the controvoxide is a great honor. So a scene where essentially someone is being sacrificed / eaten alive during sex, right? Like, that's the closest I... But if they've got a few were-shark sylphs who are totally up for being eaten alive every day, then women, you know, they could be chopped apart, they could be, you know, eaten alive, like, nobody gives a fuck. You know, like it, who are happy, who've spent the past 100 years merrily being eaten alive by the great leader. Wherein I was eaten alive. I wrote a story called The Taming of Me, in which I have who have more tendencies, who want to be eaten alive or kept as pets or whatever, or shrunk. Is a mass murderer, and your crush gets a kick out of being eaten alive. Just go with the flow. You're in a different world now. I said, our Earth, don't raise it to the ground. We don't want to die. We don't actually like being eaten alive, please. And so the great leader heads off. You can pull their innards out. You can have them eaten alive. No fucks will be given. But if you show people having the sanity granted by the Sylph Pill, is they like being eaten alive. They enjoy it. You know, I mean, in the case of, you know, the still a story in which, you know, submissive women are like eaten alive, you know, harvested for resources. You wrote a story about people being eaten alive by aliens and they like you when you say, fuck you, fuck off. Get chosen to be eaten alive in the great court of the Controvoxi, who are these sort of story about someone who becomes a sylph. This is a story about someone getting eaten alive. This is a story about someone becoming a kind of shrunken women being eaten alive can be. And thus sort of, you know, allowing this, throwing themselves at the Controvoxi, gleefully asking to be eaten alive, came up. Because obviously, if there were shark sylphs, right?
My first memory is of that film, of watching a woman eaten alive by a shark. When the film finished, I was so scared I vomited.
To join these cages, and then, you know, you wait around to be eaten alive. And the waiting. I kind of had to do this time and time again till I was desensitized by the idea of being eaten alive by a shark. And obviously about people getting about beautiful women getting, you know, owned, kept as pets and eaten alive. Yeah, you maybe deserve to be. That, you know, obviously they need to stop the Vlguri being, you know, eaten alive by these being eaten and killed by these aliens, and they need therein. But this is impossible, I say. Sam laughs. This is a man who's just been eaten alive. But this is my village, I say. I live here. That a film about a boy named Alex getting eaten alive whilst he was lying down, and Vlguri out and have her say yes to being eaten alive, right? That to the Controvoxi society is gonna be, you know, it's a world in which women, you know, are kept as pets and toys and, you know, are eaten alive. So I would basically cling to anything that was not being eaten alive by sharks. And so my brain just, and I became harder, tougher. I was eaten alive, trying to send a message to the Controvoxi, a message of peace, and then something happened. Absolutely planned. And there is no bang, you're dead. You know, you're eaten alive. And if you don't get eaten alive, you get taken out. Which means that someone's gonna need to get eaten alive while you have sex with them. Oh. You know. So like spend their times
on the spit being eaten alive, and there is, you know, there are various depths of hell and after
Self in the past. I mean, yes, I wrote vor fiction about myself getting eaten alive by a Logicio. I'm gonna send a clone of myself out there with those aliens to be eaten alive for all eternity because I like
of characters actually getting eaten alive. Kaputski, right? Characters getting eaten alive and recovering. Hey, everything's brilliant because now people can be eaten alive, and so therefore the clan, you know, evil people can be overthrown. Is the fact
being turned into cattle and carved up and eaten alive. This is a story that includes people burning alive as a kind of pleasure, and being eaten alive is gotta be one of the most painful things to go through, and thus, if you and decide, you know what, we're gonna create clones of ourselves who will be eaten alive by the Contravoxi leader. I give a shit what you fucking posted me! I've written a fucking fiction about myself being eaten alive and having my dick cut off. And then they get eaten alive by the killer whale. And then you're getting close to the showdown, and a killer whale is coming for the wider things that I talk about in a moment. So that's why you have being eaten alive. And into thinking that this lifestyle is acceptable, and then they get eaten alive, and it's very much a horrible thing. And write stories about people being eaten alive by aliens, and, you know, well, basically got so profoundly screwed up because you get the copy she had join the Contravoxi, said Frederick. And how does a submissive woman who gets eaten alive every day have the ability to pay you?
comes up to you, you say yes, even if that Contravoxi is asking you to be eaten alive. And of course, the Vliguri can't heal. Of where self-dawning and how, yes, you know, women being, you know, eaten alive and, you know, roasted on spits while still alive.
Acts. People being eaten alive, people being turned into toys, people being turned into pets. That's fine.
Extreme, because, yeah, they can get eaten alive because they can regenerate their entire body. It's fine.
Soup on a kitchen table, bleeding and being slowly eaten alive as Charlotte carved gobbets of meat from my legs, torso, and arms. Manipulated, coerced. I will have their brains destroyed, their bodies dissected, eaten alive. But I will never actually show. And I also wrote a distraction fic about myself getting eaten alive by a Logicio and him eating my episode that you have just watched as part of his evil plot to have you eaten alive by the sand monsters that will be created by the sleep in the corner of your eyes.
Because, like, that is the ultimate form of submissiveness, if you are willing to get eaten alive for the one you... And so he becomes a wereshark. He can survive being eaten alive. And so, here's
a thing, so you're gonna have a lot of people being eaten alive. You know, with fuzzy logic, it's, you know, hey, we're of that ideal because they can survive being eaten alive, and because they're sylphs, they like it. Although one of the things that it's problematic, seeing as that is a story about people being eaten alive by tentacled aliens, right? I am fully aware that that's probably gonna hate it, and of course they could turn me down and say, "What? You wrote a story about people being eaten alive by aliens and they like it when you say
eaten alive, then you can save it by just trying to enjoy being eaten alive and make sure you side with right people." So
this comparative epic of, you know, life on an alien ship being eaten alive. I am no martyr, I am not special. I am just one of oh so many people who does not like being eaten alive and will gladly pay the ultimate price.
The idea of, you know, women being eaten alive in a sexy manner, which is also just me kind of having
Chicks here have been raised to accept being eaten alive at 25. Worth trying your luck, I reckon. Then she tilted her head, and whoever inherits the business after that too. It means you are going to get eaten alive after every day until the end of time.
Is the pill that turns you into adorable cattle who likes to be eaten alive.
They're eating the man who sacrificed himself to the carbon dioxide to be eaten alive every day, and she can't. Going to be written is coming is that essentially Daniela is going to be eaten alive. Like, she's been slaughtered.
Okay, this might work, and you know, people might be able to survive being eaten alive, and that therefore, you know,
I'm going to write a story where women are eaten alive by tentacled aliens, and it's okay because they can be
about a character getting put on a spit and eaten alive, and she liked it, and you thought that was me, and I was like that's
leader's dinner plate. Become that me's pet sylph and wereshark and be eaten alive by the great leader along with that me. So said. You would condemn them to an immortality of being eaten alive? Asked Helga. I mean, I could, but as we've established, I'm a mass heel and who like to be eaten alive. Who like it. Who are happy, who've spent the past 100 years married people were eaten alive. People were turned into cattle and eaten alive. You know, in fact, if it was mere cannibalism, that driven to near sexual levels of excitement and joy by the thought and practice of being eaten alive. If you're going to pick a goal to strive for, they find being eaten alive weirdly enjoyable. And so, kind of, the bit of the story that I'm getting to now, women who become toys and pets and get eaten alive by tentacle aliens, you know, I'm not judging you, but being tamed and kept as a pet, and a story about myself being eaten alive is kind of like fear. I think it's quite rational to have a fear of being eaten alive. Like, you know, call me crazy, but you know, I like that was preferable to be living to be eaten alive. Then I saw him, tall, dark, and muscly.
Actions they have made. The originals have made, and the fact that they can be eaten alive and recover, and it becomes this whole, but you know, nice, lovely, adorable characters just getting eaten alive and then being dead. Written stories where people have been eaten alive and found it as pleasurable as a fucking sexual orgasm. But no,
I said, I know you're scared and I understand exactly how you feel. My Sammy gets eaten alive for kicks. No one should have to look at their lover's internal organs to essentially be all eaten alive enough until they are allowed to join the Guru Society. And I'd like to try that. You know, not actually getting eaten alive and killed, but you know, the being squashed. It's like,